The air was thick with tension as I stood at the edge of the storm drain, my heart racing. I could hear Emma's voice, soft, trembling, but full of fear, coming through the phone. "Daddy, I'm stuck. She locked me in here." I didn't need to ask who she was. The voice that had tormented us for weeks, the woman who had made it clear my daughter didn't belong, had just crossed a line I never thought possible. Time slowed as I raced toward the drain, adrenaline surging through my veins. This wasn't just about a neighbor's cruelty anymore. This was about survival. Would I make it in time? Would Emma be okay? And as the storm clouds began to gather above, I realized this was just the beginning. "Get that wheelchair off the community walkway," Patricia screamed, pointing at Emma's wheelchair. Without warning, she shoved Emma from her chair, sending her tumbling toward a storm drain. A loud clang echoed as Patricia locked it shut, completely unaware of Emma's father's past as a Navy SEAL. But before you dive into the full story, leave a comment below telling us where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more gripping tales. "Move that wheelchair now!" The shrill command cut through the tranquil Saturday morning, shattering the calm like glass. My gaze snapped upward to see Patricia Wilson, the newly elected HOA president, standing over my 13-year-old daughter, Emma, with pure disdain written all over her face. I was kneeling beside Emma, helping her pick wildflowers along the peaceful community path, a simple, quiet father-daughter moment, until it was violently interrupted. "Excuse me?" I asked, stepping forward, my voice steady despite the anger boiling in my veins. "Your daughter's contraption is blocking the walkway," Patricia sneered, her words venomous. "It's against HOA regulations." I rose slowly, forcing my voice to stay calm, though inside every nerve was burning. "This isn't a contraption," I said. "This is my daughter's wheelchair. She has cerebral palsy, and we have every right to use these paths." Patricia crossed her arms, her designer sunglasses glinting in the morning light. "The rules are clear. No obstructions on walkways. That includes wheelchairs. This path is for normal residents who can walk just fine." Emma's face went pale, her smile evaporating into a shadow of shame. My heart clenched. A protective rage, the kind I had felt in the most harrowing moments of my 15 years as a Navy SEAL, surged through me. But I was no longer in the military. I was a civilian, and this time, I needed to approach it differently. "My daughter has every legal right to be here," I said, my voice low but firm. "The Americans with Disabilities Act makes that clear." Patricia's smile twisted, cruel and mocking. "HOA rules override that nonsense. I make the decisions here, and I'm telling you." She pointed at Emma's wheelchair. "That thing is an eyesore. It lowers property values." Emma's small hand reached for mine, trembling. "It's okay, Dad," she whispered. "We can go home." I squeezed her hand gently. "No, sweetheart. You belong here. You have every right." Patricia, unmoved, pulled out her phone and began snapping pictures. "I'm writing you up for a violation," she declared coldly. "And if I see this again, the fines will double each time." As Patricia walked away, I knelt beside Emma, gently wiping a tear from her cheek. "Don't listen to her, Em. She's wrong." "Why does she hate me, Dad?" Emma whispered, her voice trembling. "She doesn't hate you, honey. Some people just don't understand differences," I reassured her. But even as the words left my mouth, I knew deep down they weren't entirely true. The hatred I had seen in Patricia's eyes was far from confusion. It was cold, deliberate cruelty. That confrontation was only the beginning. Over the next week, the harassment grew worse. Citations appeared on our door daily, each one more absurd than the last. There was one for Emma's therapeutic wind chimes claiming a noise violation, another for the ramp I'd built to help Emma access the front door, an unapproved structural modification, and even for the wildflowers Emma had lovingly planted in our front yard, labeled as non-approved vegetation. I tried reasoning with the HOA board, but Patricia had them firmly under her thumb. When I mentioned the ADA, Patricia simply laughed. "This is private property governed by HOA rules," she sneered at the meeting. "If you don't like it, maybe you should move somewhere more suitable for your situation." Several neighbors shifted uncomfortably in their seats, but no one dared speak up. The fear of Patricia's wrath kept them silent. I had faced enemy fire without flinching in my past life, but watching my daughter's spirit slowly shatter under Patricia's relentless, targeted cruelty, this was unbearable. Emma, once so eager to be outside, now preferred to stay indoors, avoiding the neighbors' stares and the whispers that followed her every move. And then came the day that would change everything. I had a VA medical appointment I couldn't reschedule. Emma insisted she'd be fine alone for an hour. She was 13, determined to prove she could be independent despite her disability. I made sure she had her phone and promised to return quickly. But when I got home, the house was eerily silent. "Emma," I called, my voice rising in worry. I checked every room. Panic surged in my chest as I discovered her wheelchair tipped over in the backyard, beside her garden. Just then, my phone rang with an unknown number. "Daddy?" Emma's voice was barely audible, broken by sobs. "Help me." My heart stopped. "Emma, where are you? What happened?" "The storm drain at the end of the street," she gasped between sobs. "Mrs. Wilson said I was trespassing in the community garden. She pushed my wheelchair. I fell out, and she closed the grate and locked it. It's dark, Daddy. There's water." Everything inside me went silent. The deadly calm that had once kept me alive in combat washed over me. "I'm coming right now. Stay on the phone." I ran faster than I had in years, my heart pounding as I reached the large drainage ditch at the end of our street. Through the metal grate, I could see Emma huddled on a narrow concrete ledge, inches above the rushing water below. Her clothes were soaked, and she trembled uncontrollably. The grate was locked tight with a heavy chain and padlock. "Em, I'm here. I'm getting you out right now." My voice was steady, despite the overwhelming rage and fear surging through me. "She said, 'People like me don't belong here,'" Emma sobbed, her voice breaking. "She said, 'I make the neighborhood look bad.'" The words hit me like a blow. I sprinted back to the house, grabbed the bolt cutters from the garage, and rushed back in seconds. The chain snapped with one powerful squeeze. I threw the grate open and climbed down, lifting Emma into my arms. She clung to me, her small body shaking with cold and fear. "She took my phone after I called you," Emma whispered, her voice faint. "But a nice lady walking her dog heard me crying and let me use hers." As I carried Emma home, neighbors began to emerge from their houses, drawn by the commotion. Their faces twisted in shock when they saw Emma's condition, her clothes muddy and torn, scrapes covering her arms and legs, her lips tinged blue from the cold water. "What happened?" Mrs. Gonzalez, our elderly neighbor, asked in horror. "Patricia Wilson threw my daughter into the storm drain and locked her inside," I replied, my voice icy and calm. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The neighbors were finally seeing Patricia's cruelty for what it truly was. Mrs. Gonzalez didn't hesitate. She stepped forward, her voice full of urgency. "Bring her to my house. I was a nurse for 40 years. After getting Emma cleaned up and checked for any serious injuries, I made the call to the police. While waiting for them to arrive, I dialed Michael, my former SEAL teammate now working for the county prosecutor's office. "I need your help, brother, and I need it now." The police arrived soon after, taking detailed statements and photographs of Emma's injuries. The officers were visibly disturbed, especially when Emma recalled Patricia's words. She said, "The drain was where things that don't work properly belong," Emma whispered softly to the officers. One of them, a young woman, reached out and gently squeezed Emma's hand. "You're the bravest person I've met this year," she said, her voice filled with admiration. That evening, Patricia was arrested, charged with assault, child endangerment, and false imprisonment. But I knew from experience that the justice system could be slow, unpredictable. I couldn't afford to wait. I needed to ensure Patricia would never threaten my daughter again. The next morning, as Patricia was being processed at the county jail, I began to put my plan into motion. First, I went door to door throughout the neighborhood, sharing the horrifying truth of what had happened to Emma. Many of the neighbors were horrified, admitting they had seen Patricia's cruel behavior, but had been too afraid to speak up. Others mentioned their own encounters with her tyrannical grip over the community. Then, with Michael's help, I dug deeper. We accessed public records and found something interesting. Patricia had numerous undisclosed modifications to her own home, all of which violated the very HOA rules she had ruthlessly enforced against others. It was time to act. I called for an emergency HOA meeting. The community center was packed. Everyone was eager to be there. Their curiosity piqued. When I took the floor, I didn't need to shout. My years as a Navy SEAL had taught me one thing. True authority comes from control, not volume. Yesterday, Patricia Wilson pushed my disabled daughter into a storm drain and locked her inside. I replied, my voice icy and calm. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The neighbors were finally seeing Patricia's cruelty for what it truly was. Mrs. Gonzalez didn't hesitate. She stepped forward, her voice full of urgency. Bring her to my house. I was a nurse for 40 years. After getting Emma cleaned up and checked for any serious injuries, I made the call to the police. While waiting for them to arrive, I dialed Michael, my former SEAL teammate, now working for the county prosecutor's office. I need your help, brother, and I need it now. The police arrived soon after, taking detailed statements and photographs of Emma's injuries. The officers were visibly disturbed, especially when Emma recalled Patricia's words. She said, "The drain was where things that don't work properly belong," Emma whispered softly to the officers. One of them, a young woman, reached out and gently squeezed Emma's hand. "You're the bravest person I've met this year," she said, her voice filled with admiration. That evening, Patricia was arrested, charged with assault, child endangerment, and false imprisonment. But I knew from experience that the justice system could be slow, unpredictable. I couldn't afford to wait. I needed to ensure Patricia would never threaten my daughter again. The next morning, as Patricia was being processed at the county jail, I began to put my plan into motion. First, I went door to door throughout the neighborhood, sharing the horrifying truth of what had happened to Emma. Many of the neighbors were horrified, admitting they had seen Patricia's cruel behavior, but had been too afraid to speak up. Others mentioned their own encounters with her tyrannical grip over the community. Then, with Michael's help, I dug deeper. We accessed public records and found something interesting. Patricia had numerous undisclosed modifications to her own home, all of which violated the very HOA rules she had ruthlessly enforced against others. It was time to act. I called for an emergency HOA meeting. The community center was packed. Everyone was eager to be there. Their curiosity piqued. When I took the floor, I didn't need to shout. My years as a Navy SEAL had taught me one thing. True authority comes from control, not volume. Yesterday, Patricia Wilson pushed my disabled daughter into a storm drain and locked her inside. I began, my voice cutting through the silence. Emma could have drowned if the rain had come as forecast. I showed them the photos, the injuries on Emma's small body, the lock on the drain grate. But this isn't just about my daughter, I continued, my tone hardening. Patricia has been abusing her power, terrorizing all of us. One by one, the neighbors stood to share their own stories. The Chin family had been fined because their grandmother had hung traditional lanterns for a cultural holiday. The Rodriguez family had been fined for their children's basketball hoop. The Patels had received violations for the smell of their traditional cooking. And then, with a steady hand, I presented the evidence of Patricia's own violations. An unauthorized pool installation, non-compliant fencing, and landscaping changes without approval. Patricia doesn't care about property values, I concluded, my voice calm but cutting. She cares about power and control, and she was willing to harm a child to maintain it. The vote to remove Patricia from the HOA board was unanimous. The vote to ban her from ever serving again followed with equal force. But I wasn't done. Not yet. Through Michael's connections, I ensured the district attorney understood the gravity of Patricia's actions. No plea deals, no reduced charges. This was going to be bigger than just the community. It was about making sure Patricia's cruelty would be held accountable. The local news picked up the story the very next day. The image of a decorated Navy SEAL and his disabled daughter being locked in a drain by the HOA president struck a chord. Within hours, it went national. Patricia's real estate empire crumbled overnight. No one wanted to associate with someone who could inflict such brutality on a disabled child. The world was watching, and Patricia was no longer in control. When her case finally went to trial 3 months later, the courtroom was packed. Emma testified first, her voice unwavering as she recounted every detail. They said I made everything look bad because I'm different, Emma told them, her words heavy but powerful. As I took the stand, the prosecutor asked about my military background. 15 years as a Navy SEAL, I replied simply. 4 combat tours. And in all that time, did you ever encounter cruelty like what Mrs. Wilson showed your daughter? I turned my gaze toward Patricia. Her smirk was gone. The courtroom was tense. In combat, I said slowly, I faced enemies who were at least honest about their intentions. Mrs. Wilson attacked a disabled child while pretending to protect a community. In my experience, that kind of calculated cruelty is its own special kind of evil. The jury deliberated for only 90 minutes before delivering a guilty verdict on all counts. The judge, normally reserved, seemed genuinely shaken by Emma's testimony. This court finds your actions not only criminal, but morally reprehensible, she said, turning to Patricia. You targeted a child because of her disability, showing a level of cruelty that warrants the maximum penalty. Patricia was sentenced to 5 years in prison, without the possibility of early parole, along with financial restitution to Emma for both physical and emotional damages. As we left the courthouse, reporters surged forward, shouting questions. But Emma tugged at my hand, wanting to say something. I lifted her up so the microphones could catch her words. I want other kids like me to know they belong everywhere, Emma said, her voice strong and unwavering. And I want people to stand up when they see someone being mean, not just look away. Patricia's house was sold while she served her prison sentence. And with her gone, our neighborhood began to heal. The HOA, now led by a committee that included Mrs. Gonzalez and Mr. Patel, adopted new bylaws explicitly prohibiting discrimination of any kind. Our community came together to build an accessible playground in the common area, a place where children of all abilities could play together. Emma helped design the features, making sure it would be a space where no child felt excluded. The same storm drain where Emma had been trapped was filled in and transformed into a butterfly garden with a small plaque reading, Emma's Place, where everyone belongs. 1 year after the incident, on Emma's 14th birthday, the mayor presented her with a key to the city for her courage in standing up against discrimination. The ceremony was held right in our front yard, beside the wildflowers that had first triggered Patricia's wrath. Emma hasn't just changed one neighborhood, the mayor said, his voice filled with admiration. Her story has inspired changes in HOA regulations across the state to ensure that the rights of residents with disabilities are protected. As I watched Emma accept the key, her face glowing with pride, I realized something important. We had moved to this neighborhood seeking peace after my military career. But real peace doesn't come from avoiding conflict. It comes from standing up for what's right, especially for those who can't stand on their own. Sometimes at night, Emma still has nightmares about being trapped in the dark. On those nights, I sit with her until she falls back asleep, and I remind her of the butterfly garden, a symbol of how beauty can grow in the darkest places. Patricia Wilson learned too late that the man whose disabled daughter she had thrown away like trash had been trained by the Navy to leave no one behind, especially not his own child. Her cruelty cost her everything, her position, her business, her freedom, and any shred of respect she once commanded. And Emma? She blossomed. The shy girl who once tried to hide her disability became an outspoken advocate for accessibility rights. The garden became her special place, where she mentored other children with disabilities, teaching them that they too belonged everywhere. One evening, as we watched butterflies land on her flowers, Emma asked me, "Dad, do you think Mrs. Wilson ever feels sorry for what she did?" I considered the question carefully. "I don't know, sweetheart, but I do know this. What she did to hurt you ended up making you stronger and changing things for the better. Sometimes the people who try to break us end up making us unbreakable instead." Emma smiled, the setting sun catching the golden highlights in her hair. "Then I guess I should thank her someday." "That's very generous of you," I said, amazed once again by my daughter's capacity for forgiveness. Emma shrugged. "Well, you always told me the best revenge is living well." She gestured to the neighborhood around us, the inclusive playground filled with laughing children, the neighbors waving as they passed by, the community that had finally become the safe haven we had sought. And look at us now, Dad, she said, her smile lighting up her entire face. We're living really, really well.